So it's November 10th. It's a Tuesday. You know what that means. It's the Kickstarter launch day of the week. So what do we have on the horizon this week? What's new? What's notable? What's falling under the radar? What's ending? What should you be aware of in the week that is upcoming? Let's take a look. Thanks for watching. As always, opinions are my own, and I'll let you know as much as I can and be transparent as possible. So let's take a look. So first up of the launching, we're just going to go with what came out today and what are the big hitters. I just put out a video earlier over the weekend, specifically on Bardsung, a little bit about what we know about it. It is Steamforged Games' latest project to launch. Their previous two from here was Devil May Cry, and it is just getting to backers now. The early impressions are good. It's still waiting on Resident Evil 3, but then this is the next one that they're putting out there. Now, the approach is a little bit different. This is their own dungeon crawler built from the ground up. This is not an IP that they have taken from somewhere else and repopularized as their own or tried to make mechanics that fit the existing IP or the video game that was already there in the first place. And so they have more of the creative freedom that I think hopefully we'll see, and we've already seen in what's been presented so far. Now, let's just take a look a second here. They're already at almost $200,000. You're looking at about 9 hours after launch. To be honest, that's a little bit under, a little bit over of what I was expecting. It started a little slow. Nothing really funded very quickly today, of all surprises, except for the next one we're going to talk about, Burncycle. And even then, we'll talk about what I think is going to happen there. And Bardsung is doing something interesting. They're doing the daily unlocks, reveals, but they're also doing the stretch goals. So we can kind of take a look here. And they're not doing a long campaign. They're only doing a 16-day campaign that's ending just after Thanksgiving. So this is not going to be prolonged in that sense. So we already sort of know a little bit if you watched the video or if you've looked at the page at all. There's only one pledge level. They're making it very simple, very straightforward. I think they learned their lesson in the past, and I think it shows from a couple of the other campaigns, especially the one I just mentioned, Devil May Cry, where they really only had one pledge level there too that you were essentially getting. And so it's just at what was announced. You knew it was $99 going in. You're getting the core box, you're getting the exclusive character, and you're getting the stretch goals. The question is, and this is where the value is going to come in or not, is what are the stretch goals going to look like? How extensive are they going to be? And nobody knows at this point. Now, as I said earlier, they're going to be doing it two ways, so we're just going to have to kind of wait and see. And I have to expect that there's going to be a couple surprises along the way in terms of expansions. Now, contrary to the pledge that was Devil May Cry, where they threw in expansions into the pledge level that was already existing, you're not seeing that here. So I have to think that the add-ons are going to be more, which makes me both a little bit trepidatious, but also a little bit eager to see what else they're sort of holding and not revealing all of their cards right away. I think that can be a blessing and a curse when it comes to these scenarios. The other thing I think you have to take note of is exactly like I predicted, this was going to be second quarter at the bare earliest of 2022, not knowing how the market is going to be affected, transportation. These are miniature heavy games, and the molds and everything goes along with that is intense. And so you're looking at about a year and a half, which is exactly what I would expect with a game like this nowadays. So that doesn't surprise me at all. So what are we seeing here? I won't reiterate and rehash all of the other video that I talked about, and I broke down all the mechanics and what's new, what's different, what they're throwing out there. But essentially, this is a game where you are venturing into this dungeon, trying to dive deeper and deeper, trying to make it from one set of stairs to another set of stairs across the board, and encountering various obstacles, puzzles, enemies, wandering monsters along the way. It's sort of a randomly but not randomly generated map, if that makes sense. It's procedurally generated, meaning as you proceed out of a room, you are randomly getting the next room of what it is. So no two maps, even on the same level, played to the same time, will be the same. You are also drawing from two different decks in order to determine what that room actually is and what populates in that area. So that right in and of itself is pretty different. It's cooperative, it's 1 to 5 players. The models look good. We know with Steamforged Games, as much as you want to talk about their other distribution and follow-up issues from many of their prior campaigns, especially at the beginning, their models are very good. That's never been the issue here. Now, here you go. You can see all the miniatures you're getting. Again, you're going to be getting loads of plastic, which is a blessing and a curse to all that it is. And I think they already have room down here for, this is the first stretch goal, the Oni, which is a massive monster. Again, it looks beautiful. They do Kickstarter exclusives, so buyer beware if you're not getting in now. And completed quest goals. And so we're going to see what happens here. You've got a new enemy, you've got a new good guy coming up, you've got a couple additional add-on marketplace. So this is where you're going to see the other things pop up. And it'll be interesting to see what happens here. Now, a little bit more about the game in and of itself. You're seeing the classic dice here. They are basing this heavily on D&D. You have the 6 main characteristics of D&D. You've got flavors of the various main classes in D&D. You're using a lot of the same dice as D&D. Now, they've also thrown out the hex system, and they've gone to areas in which you can sort of zones to go between. So you're not having the classic move from one square to the next square to the next square and tactical if I'm moving around him. It's a zone game. Again, see my other video for talking about how you're leveling up differently, how you're customizing your character, how you're not pigeonholed into the class that you're starting in. So your mage doesn't have to be a mage could be a battle mage, a thief could be wielding magic, a paladin could be a backline healer. It doesn't, you are given a complete ability to customize it, and that's what they're focusing on heavily. Now, the campaign element of things and the enemies and the AI and all of that is going to be sort of the big test. And they do have Tabletopia at some point down here that they're going to be allowing people to test it out on, I believe. And they're also going to be putting out a rule book. Now, hopefully this rule book is earlier on in the campaign so we can tell a little bit more about how much depth in terms of those cards that I was saying that they're holding close to the vest, and have a good idea. Because I think that's going to help determine a lot of how this succeeds further. They've got a couple videos of the guys playing it on Tabletopia here, a couple comments here, a couple other videos, a demo game I watched a little bit of. And so again, here's all your stuff that you're getting. I mean, you're getting plenty of stuff. That's never the issue. Now, here is the interesting thing, and they gave us a new Oni if we fund it in 48 hours. Letters, are you're getting game trays, you're getting the thief, you're getting a new hero here in a little bit. Now, I do worry that, as I posted in the comment section earlier, many a campaign have been flummoxed or significantly hampered by the inability to compensate how far the stretch goals are stretched out. Because if you don't take into account how fast it's actually trending up, a lot of the momentum that is gained is by people looking and seeing how many stretch goals are unlocked, and the more the merrier in that sense. So success begets success in that sense. And so the question is this going to slow things down, having a 30,000 euro, which is more like over $40,000, or not? And I wonder if the daily reveals are going to mitigate that a little bit, or they're not going to be enough, and they're going to have to do what Freedom 5 did and sort of scale things back a little bit. And you can see what Freedom 5 did. Freedom 5 has really blossomed now, and they're over $600,000 today. So I'm backing right now. You can see right here, I'm backing. I'm no bones about it. Whether or not I'm going to keep it, either way, I think this game has very high potential. But I think, like a lot of their other games, the ceiling is high. But unlike Darkest Dungeon, the basement is a little bit lower than that. You're not as sure about the product. You're more sure about some of the stuff you're getting in the product being quality rather than the actual game. Where Steamforged Games is really going to be a make it or break it campaign for them, I think. If they can rebound with the latest Resident Evil and the latest Devil May Cry, as well as this one, then that puts them in a completely different light than the whole Dark Souls fiasco that they sort of started off with. Because they have Monster Hunter coming after this sometime in the new year, probably in the first quarter. And if this is a positive and seen as very positive, I think it's only going to translate into helping them in Monster Hunter later, which has the ability to draw both from the video game and the board game scene crowd. And again, massive 7-figure numbers then. So is it worth it at this point? I don't know, but I think it's worth taking a look at as the campaign closes and as the stretch goals get unlocked, depending on how quickly they are. Next up is the one that really took off today, Burncycle. It's by Chip Theory Games. If you know Chip Theory Games, you know Chip Theory Games. I mean, 300,000, this is relatively reflective of what their first days look like. And having looked at several of their past campaigns, they start out very hot and then they sort of taper off because they don't offer any exclusives. The main thing with Chip Theory Games is you are getting it at a discount. You are getting it at a discount as opposed to the retail price. Now, the biggest concern that's been raised with Chip Theory Games is a lot of the previous games of Too Many Bones and even Cloudspire when the second edition came around, when they went with the second edition Kickstarter, there was a lot of errata and a lot of tweaks that needed to be made. And a lot of people were sort of turned off by that, even though they offer upgrade packs. And so the question with CTG is it worth getting the second time around? Because if it's good and it does well at retail, especially, they're going to be offering it again later on another Kickstarter campaign, because they've already said that this one is ripe for expansions. Now, what is Burncycle? This is a complete twist on what they've sort of done in the past. Now, like I said, with CTG, the biggest thing that you know is you are getting ridiculously overcomplicated, over deluxified components with their neoprene mats and their deluxe chips that are heavy. And so you're going to pay for that. And I'm always surprised by people, they must not have any knowledge of this company in the first place, who are put off and surprised by the base pledge being $115 of being more than Bardsung with all the plastic miniatures. So I'm not really sure why people are now surprised, unless they just are completely unaware. So an all-in game pledge of gameplay is 140 bucks, probably going to cost you what, 100, it says 35, so 175 at retail, and they only do retail through their web store. You can't get these at Miniature Market for, you know, 70% of the MSRP or anything like that. So you really don't have that option. So this doesn't really surprise me. This is very similar or akin to what Cloudspire's pricing was. I think it might actually be a hair less. Again, it's actually delivering before, though, so you can see that they're probably farther along in the development than Bardsung is, or maybe because it's the lack of miniatures. Now, this game is just completely different. You are AI, essentially, that has been enslaved by humans. You are trying to hack their network both physically, but also through the technology, and you have two boards simultaneously. You can see here the player board, that is sort of the physical building that you are hacking and moving through as the robot. And then you can see here the smaller board, which is sort of the AI computer network that you are hacking into in that building. And so you get a whole bunch of stuff. Again, you're getting your money's worth, but the complaint always is, like I said, is you could probably get this for half price if they just went a little bit cheaper without really skimping on the actual quality. So they talk about how to play. It's broken down. To be frank with you, this is a really complicated AP prone game. I think this, just from watching what the gameplay in theory looks like, it looks very AP prone at more than 2 players. And that would be my biggest concern with this game, and that's why I'm not sure it's worth it, and that's why I'm not pledging right now, because I just don't think I would be able to get a game like this to the table consistently with my game group, because I think we're playing 3, 4, or 5, and this is not a game that I'm going to play with my kids. This is not a game that I'm probably going to be able to teach to my wife very easily either. So from that side of things, for me personally, is it worth it? No. But if you are a fan of TMG, I think that this game is exactly what you're looking for, that is a different spin on what they've put out in the past, because they're using different mechanics, they're using different objectives. The other problem that I think a lot of backers need to be aware of that TMG is doing in this one is there is randomness. So you take these chips that are mentioned, that are seen here, and what you're doing is you're essentially putting them in a bag at the beginning to create this quote-unquote burn cycle, which is a selection of actions that you're going to be able to do essentially each round. And you just randomly pull out 5. And the other ones are used as extra, so you can kind of mitigate a little bit with those extra. But if you don't like that, that's not gonna be something that you're gonna enjoy. The other side of things is, as you're moving through these networks, trying to get to a certain area, trying to achieve a certain action, you have to roll action dice, these dice along the side here. And you are choosing how many dice you want to roll, because some of the dice do not have successes on them. They only have like 3 out of 6 successes. The other 3 sides are blank. And so that is a lot of randomness that people may not want, especially when a lot of this crowd overlaps with worker placement and very strategic, very being able to plan out precise manners of action and turn after turn. This is going to disrupt that. And I'm not sure how people are going to feel about that. And you have to know that going in, otherwise you're going to not like this game, because that's what it uses. That being said, CTG games are always worth getting through Kickstarter as opposed to retail, like I mentioned, because you are always getting a price reduction, period. And that's before the stretch goals. And they are really stretch goals. These are not, guys, where these are fake stretch goals. Here are the dice that I mentioned, by the way, with the blank sides. And these are stretch goals that if they don't hit, you won't get them. They may come up as sales later on, but they may not as well. So they really do stretch goals. And so say what you will about that. Again, the all-in bundle, $295, because they actually have an expansion, miniatures, which are apparently magnetic, and a huge mech. So your deluxe draw bag, another playmat, another more dice. So here are their stretch goals, and they do not adjust stretch goals based on the content of how fast the Kickstarter campaign is going. So that's another thing to be aware of. If they just don't hit it, they aren't like Simon or they aren't like Awakened Realms where they're adjusting. They put these out and they are firm. And I've not seen them really adjust them in the past, and I doubt that this will be any different. So if they just don't hit it, they just don't hit it. So it's not going to be one of those where you're just going to get a ton of extra stretch goals for the sake of it. That's going to be where the value is at. No, the value is the value that you're already getting off the MSRP. The more you buy, the more you save, but you're buying a lot to begin with in terms of the buy-in price. So is it worth it? For me personally, it's not, but if you're a fan of these sort of games, absolutely. And as always, they always do their strategist level pledge, which 10 lucky people get for $650, and they get every product from here going forward. I missed it by that much. Although even if I got it, I don't know if I'd keep it, to be honest with you. So anyway, that is Burncycle right now. Again, they are over $300,000 on Kickstarter right now, just in the first day. I think they're probably going to be $750,000 by the end, but we'll see. I'm interested to see where it sort of ends up. Next one new this week is Rift Knights. This is the one I mentioned last week. The asymmetry of a team battling knights versus demons. And this game has not really been in line with the typical Red Raven games in the past in terms of the gameplay, in terms of the interaction, in terms of the theme. And I think that that's in part, but I think also you can only have, as I've mentioned previously, so many of these tactical one-on-one or even team battles, because let's face it, team battles are very difficult and there's a lot of downtime, and so not a lot of people are very interested or involved heavily in those team type battles, and it's a very niche crowd. So with Rift Knights so far, I think that's part of the reason. The other reason is it's not a very expensive game. I mean, you still have 1,000 people backing it and you still only are at 50,000. You're getting bonus everything. There are miniatures, there are standees, there are something like 9 to 11 different demons or knights on each team, each with a special power. And as your guys are beaten, you just replace them. And so you're advancing along this little track, along the outside of these tiles, which are variable. Here's the track you can see. And when the winner gets all the way to the end of the track, the game is over. Or if you run out of guys. So again, the stretch goals are really interesting here. They look like they may have spaced them a lot closer together. I feel like these are closer together than when I first looked, but I can't be positive about that. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. So this is not your typical Ryan Laukit game, and I think that's a little bit of what you're seeing, as I mentioned, that the previous backers and supporters just, that's not the same overlap in the same type of crowd. But I think what you're going to be getting is that you're going to get a solid game. I'm just not sure it's done enough, especially watching a video or two of the playthrough, that it stands out enough in the crowd from me in these other 2 to 4 player games that are more tactical, that are more take that. Is it worth it at the retail level right now? Oh, I forgot to mention, they're offering an 8 Gods card game in the setting of Sleeping Gods. So I think you have a lot of people just doing that right now. That's almost 20% of your backers are just getting the card game because there are promos for Sleeping Gods, which is their most anticipated game probably ever, to be honest. So you've got a $50 with deluxe components. Is it probably going to be worth it? Yeah, I don't think this is going to be less than $50. Now the question is, with shipping, I'm not sure, and I think that depends on how many stretch goals they get. If they get a bunch of these other ones, again, they don't do exclusives. So you're getting a bunch more stuff that will end up as expansions or mini expansions. And so if they hit a bunch of these stretch goals, I think you're going to be looking at it from that side of things. And I think the miniatures themselves are going to be, a good $30. And if the game is $30, I think you're looking at least a break even in terms of price point with this, regardless of how many of these stretch goals they hit, as long as they hit like $100,000. So if you're liking this at all, if you like the theme, I mean, the art is beautiful, don't get me wrong. It's not a game for me. I have too many of these types of games, so I personally won't be backing it after watching the playthrough, but I would not fault anybody either. I don't think you're going to lose money. I think it's worth it from just a purely financial side of things with the deluxeification as much as I'm not a fan of the deluxeification of all these games, they have to give you some enticement to back them, and that is seemingly the trend nowadays. So next up is Catacombs Monster Pit. Now, this is by Elzra Games, and this is their bread and butter line. This is Catacombs 3rd edition. This is a standalone expansion. They are offering, as with many of their other previous Kickstarters, almost everything that comes in the history of this line, they are offering it still at this time. So you can get it and not really miss out. You might pay a premium, I think. I think that's the biggest change. But you know what you're getting with this game. This is not an unknown quantity. Now, the biggest surprise to me is this isn't really funded yet. You know, the last couple have had a little bit more trouble funding as opposed to the early ones, which really struck while the iron is hot. And I'm not sure why. I think it has a lot to do with the price point, especially since the price point of these games, since they switched over from the cardboard mats to the neoprene mats, has made a difference. So I'm not sure if that's the sole difference, but if you look, I'm pledging right now, and just the base pledge for everything here is $93 plus shipping. And that's not insignificant, especially if you're outside the US or Canada when the shipping is added in. I don't know. I don't know, because I love this game. I love the idea of this game. I love the idea of Catacombs in general. It's really hard to get to the table because it's a lot of setup. It's a lot of effort. And so I'm never sure. I mean, the amount of stuff you're getting is never in question. And again, this is a game that only sells through the Elzra web shop. So you know you're going to be getting your money's worth. It's just whether or not you can afford to put the money down in the first place in these games, because almost exclusively they are higher through the Elzra web shop, just like Chip Theory Games. They offer a more premium content for your money, and you're going to pay for it, period. You're getting the expansion content not only for this standalone, but you're also getting it for the Catacombs 3E. So a lot of this is playing more towards their base. And I don't know how I feel about this, because it's a little bit of FOMO without the actual exclusives. Like, I love this game. I love the idea of this game. It's just, it's longer than I would like it to be sometimes. And there's already a lot of variability with the 3 or 4 expansions that are out there and sets that are out there. Now, again, this adds something new and different. So it's adding sort of like Burncycle, you're adding this sort of sections where you've got 2 gaming boards. You've got the overworld, which is where you're tramping around and doing all sorts of stuff. And then you've got the underworld, which is where you're doing your typical catacombs thing. So I'm very split on this. This one is probably going to come down to the last day, and I'd really like to watch a video of this. I have not had a chance to watch how it interacts between the boards. So I think those are going to be the big determinations. And honestly, it's going to be probably what else am I backing between now and then, because I'm putting a cap on how much I'm spending right now, because I only have limited time, limited shelf space, and you know, like with some of these games, I only need so much of them. And is this one that is going to be that much more to this game and take up that much more shelf space, all for one game that doesn't hit the table very often? For me, I don't know. I don't know. I think this is a good place to get in. If you got just the core and this, I think that would be a great start for Catacombs in general. I don't think you need a lot of the other stuff. If you have a lot of the other stuff, you may not need this. And that's the tough point. Again, value is there. They're going to give you the most that you can get, you know, through the Kickstarter, and it just adds a whole another dimension to things. And I think that art personally is great. I think it's divisive, but I think it's worth it. So I don't know. I don't know. It is what it is. I mean, it's D&D dexterity. And if you haven't watched it, if you watch nothing else, watch the Shut Up and Sit Down review of Catacombs. I mean, it does it better than I can do any diligence for. Shipping rates, I'm not going to go into that. It's going to be expensive because it's wood and it's heavy. So take it for what you will. It's a buyer beware. Know what you're getting into in this game too. Again, it's a niche within our hobby, and you're either going to be in or you're out. And this isn't usually going to be a game where this one is going to make it or break it for you. But you know what you're getting, and you know you're going to get your money's worth. So that is something to be said of that. Now, I'm not going to go over everything that launched today, but I am going to include this one that I've had my eye on for a while. And if you've watched anything on my channel, you know I like the indie-funded Japanese games. And to be very clear, Eetenki, this is a completely different game. Now, this only has 35 backers. I'd say go check it out because this is truly a game that if it doesn't fund on Kickstarter, they have said that these are Japanese, over in Tokyo is where they're based out of. It looks like that if this doesn't get made, this isn't being made in Japan. They made it a couple years ago, and they make like print runs of like 50 or 100 at most. And they launched already and failed in funding because the only pledge level was like $90. And so they took a little bit of that criticism to heart. And I think the lower pledge level now is like $50, which isn't horrible. Again, shipping is going to be always the question. Some of these Japanese ones are really good about shipping. Some of the shipping is ridiculous. So you're not sure what you're getting there. It's just a completely different game. And I think these are always worth looking at and exploring, even if they're not your sort of thing, because you never know what you're going to like unless you try things. And these guys out of Japan and the East, they do things completely differently, and they make twists on things that most of the guys over in the Western world in terms of development aren't on the same page of. And sometimes it works out brilliantly, and sometimes it fails spectacularly, but they do that, and I appreciate it. So what is this game? I mean, this is a game where you are this shaman priestess protecting your own nation, trying to grow crops, trying to manage the weather. It's just completely different when it comes to it, and you're manipulating when you want things to be growing, when you want certain weathers, and other people are going to be doing the same thing. I don't know if it's worth it. It's one of those where if you don't get it here, this is not a game that's going to be on the secondary market. This is not a game probably that people are going to sell afterwards. So this is going to be a game that is sort of a grail game if it turns out to be good and you don't have a copy. I mean, you're just not going to be able to get one. Is it worth $50 plus the shipping? That's the big question. I haven't had a chance to watch some of the videos of how it actually plays, so I don't know how much there is to it. I think there is a good amount of depth, but I don't know whether or not it's for me yet. And so I'm hesitating just because I haven't had a chance to dig into it with all of the other launches today. But I have it saved, and I'm backing a couple other of these Japanese games that I'm going to be getting in the next 6 months to 8 months. And so this is another one that is going to fly under the radar. Not many people are going to back. It's maybe going to questionably barely fund or not. So we'll see. I don't know. But I think it's worth checking out if you have any interest in that sort of realm at all. And if not, you can skip over this whole section of the video and you won't even see this. Last up today is Kapow. It's by the guys who did Star Realms. It is a dice creation game where you are customizing your dice and you are attacking each other. It's currently about 3/4 of the funding level, 22 days to go. You've got a couple different tiers here. 41, you're getting exclusive hero in Volume 1 and all the Volume 1 stretch goals. You're getting here's Volume 2 with all the exclusive villain and the villain stretch goals. And then you get 1 and 2 for $90. Now, I'm not a big fan of splitting this, especially with splitting the stretch goals, because it always feels like when the stretch goals are hit, one side is getting one and one side is getting the other. Now, what is it? It's a simultaneous play game where you're allocating your dice for your actions and then simultaneously revealing them and battling or upgrading and fighting accordingly. Now, is it worth it? I don't really know. This one is tricky because they don't have any stretch goals revealed yet about what's going to be happening. And how are the stretch goals going to be split between Volume 1 and Volume 2? If every stretch goal has one for Volume 1 and Volume 2, then that's a lot better deal, and you can probably get away with getting just one. If they're every other or something along those lines, or they're aesthetic upgrades, then I have a hard time saying this. Now, they are going with the Kickstarter exclusives, which is an interesting thing, and I think you see a lot more of the smaller campaigns that end up doing this just in order to attract backers, not to just wait until retail. And it's a blessing curse. And dice forging, as in the original Dice Forge game, making dice with customized sides is not very common out there. And again, it doesn't appeal to me. It doesn't appeal to me. And now you're splitting it into 2 volumes, and each of these volumes better be significant, because $45 is a pretty significant, tier level to have for a game that is essentially dice and cards. So it really is, again, another campaign that's made by the stretch goals. The art is okay. I'm not a big fan. I like the Freedom 5 art much better. This is a 2nd edition. It's picked up by White Wizards, like I said, the guys that make Star Realm. So they obviously think something of it. So the guys who made Star Realm, you can tell that there's going to be support for it at least, and that's a positive. Now, again, support-wise, is it going to be worth it? I know some of the Star Realm promos exclusives are harder to get if you didn't get them in the Kickstarter. So if this interests you, these may be hard to get if you're not going to go for both. But again, with something like this, that's more of a big unknown on the dice side of things. That's more of the CCG/LCG combo. I have a hard time going in on it just for that reason. So, you're only getting 6 heroes or 6, supers in each box. So 6 for 45, a box of 6 for Sakura arms costs me 29. And so, of the two right now, my preference would be on Sakura arms. But this is a completely different element than Sakura arms is too, in that sense. So is it worth it? I'd say probably not at this point, but I think you'll know much more definitively at the end of the campaign. Okay, we're going to quick fly through a couple end things here. 6 days to go on Endless Winter, Paleoamericans. Again, you've got the worker placement deck building. I think, like I said before in another video, this has high ceiling. This has a little bit lower basement than 2 of the other games that are already out there, which maybe have less of a high ceiling in terms of Lost Ruins of Arnak and Dune Imperium, especially with Dune Imperium's review coming out from Dice Tower, calling it probably one of the best games of 2020. That puts a lot of pressure on this game to succeed and achieve that because of the increased price point, because of the increased time to retail. And the question is, are other good games with these two combinations going to come out between now and when this delivers? And are you going to have this invested and be so invested in this that you might end up missing those? I think, again, the price point is okay. I think you're getting, a pretty good deal for $60 here with the deluxe expansion, with the Ancestors expansion, the modules, and the stretch goals. So for $60, it's probably worth it if you can wait until the end of 2021. That is a long time, though. That is massive for a game that has these sort of components. And I think, let's check. Does it has some miniatures? Maybe that's the reason, but it's not like it's a plastic fiend that's sitting on your shelf. So I'm not sure why it's taking so long on that side of things. That's longer than I would have expected. But I think that pledge level is definitely worth it. I'm not sure if the $90 pledge level is worth it in terms of, do you need all of this? Because I think you're getting the FOMO at that point with all of these expansions and modules, especially when you haven't played any of the base game. I think that's always a risky trade-off. But in terms of actual value, it's there. So if this strikes you, you definitely want to get the higher level, because it'll definitely keep its resale value with all those expansions come out separately, especially with the deluxe edition. So if anything, you're going higher. You're going high on this one if you're going to go in, no doubt. Nova Aetas Renaissance is ending in less than 2 days. It's at almost 900,000. It'll probably reach close to the 1.1, 1.2 mark. Again, this is a complete hit or miss, I think. The early impressions by people who have prototypes are very positive, but I still can't discount by Ludus Magnus and their issues in the past in terms of the integration, in terms of the rulebook, in terms of the follow-through and the balancing. And if you're okay with things not being balanced, if you're okay with having really pretty miniatures and pretty good gameplay and not excellent, I think that this is a slam dunk for you, and I would probably go all in on this. But I think this is a game where if you're concerned at all about what it is, I think you go with $1 on this, just so you can see how it develops over the next 6 months, because you know the late pledge is going to be open that long. It also comes with a crossover Hyperion expansion for Black Rose Wars, and I think Black Rose backers have mixed feelings about that I talked about in a separate video. Again, I think you're getting probably your money's worth. Again, interesting, the Endless Winter and this game are supposed to be delivered at the same time. And this game is $150. And again, you're getting a lot for $150. You've got this unique mechanic with the Horologium, where you're sort of timed and you have a lot of timed elements, and it's sort of like a rondel-ish management of when you take your actions, how far it moves you along that. So it's unique enough that it's worth it, but I'm just not willing to risk personally my money on anything from Ludus Magnus right now, as much as they do put out Kickstarter exclusives and you're getting a ton of crap. You are getting a ton, absolute ton. There is no doubt that it is worth it from a pure stuff standpoint. But if the stuff isn't that good, or if it's not that balanced, or if it doesn't really flow that well, that's where the trouble is. It doesn't matter how much of that stuff you have. And that's where I'm not really willing to risk $150 yet at this point. And this is when I would rather pick up on the secondary market for a premium rather than risk it in the short term. But that's just me. I mean, there's clearly 1,500 people that are going all in. But I think with this one, you go all in because I think you'll make your money back if it's halfway decent. Freedom 5, I just talked about that earlier. 660 now. I mean, they've well over 100,000 today. They're just under the 72-hour mark. That's because, as you can see, the images changed at all. They added a new expansion, this Cosmic Threat expansion, which adds a bunch of cosmic villains attacking sort of your Thanos-esque character coming back to Earth and trying to conquer things. And I think it's something like $60 for the expansion. But if you get the all-in bundle now, all-in gameplay bundle, as you can see, I'm backing here the hero level pledge here. I believe it's 169 total. But with that, that also includes the community team up and the Cosmic Threats expansion both. So I'm not sure how I feel about that because I'm not super enthused about the community campaign, but I think that not having this expansion is going to, my FOMO is striking. So this is a game where I feel like, again, they have said that the retail is not going to be able to handle all of the stuff that's just in the base level pledge here, and so it's going to be split. And so you're going to be, again, you're going to be getting your money's worth. It's just whether or not this game is for you because there's a lot of dice rolling, there is a lot of mitigation, but there's also a lot of balance concerns, I think, in terms of the heroes because they keep on adding more and more. And is it going to be balanced enough, or are certain heroes going to be your go-to? One of the playtesters on Board Game Geek said, yeah, I always choose this guy, Captain whatever his name is, the Superman guy-esque. And because he is clearly the most powerful, and you cannot win the mission without when I was playing solo two-handed. And that's concerning to me when I hear that, but that's also development issue. And again, this is end of 2021. These guys have not been terribly on time. I think I did the Aeon, whatever it was, the final big box of Sentinel heroes, and that was significantly delayed. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if since you're having miniatures and colored pre-painted miniatures here, that this is going to be probably early 2022. I think it's a good price for the pre-painted miniatures too. But personally, I never pay for that. I just can't. I mean, that's a whole other game or two, as beautiful as they look. This is going to be a game where I just wonder if Hour of Need as well as Tokyo Sidekick are very similar. And I'm just not sure they're going to be both needed. But I think getting this now is going to be well worth it, considering all of the stretch goals that are already included with this. It's just going to be much, much, much more. I think the only downside of getting these pre-painted miniatures and some of these higher levels is resellability. People are not willing to usually chunk down this type of money post-Kickstarter. And so that's where you potentially lose money. I think you make money on the lower ones, but I think it's harder because there's so few people that want these higher ones afterwards that it's difficult to resell. Not that you can't, but it's a lot of time and effort. Last up, that's ending soon, Kabuto Sumo. If you know anything about this, I'm getting a copy. It's a 2 to 4 player, asymmetric. You are sumo, beetles, insects, pushing each other off of the side, using those pieces that fall off to power your beetle up to do special moves. And it just looks like a lot of fun. It looks like a lot of kid fun, a lot of adult fun. It looks like deceptively simple, but deceptively also more complicated than I think a lot of people give it credit for. Don't let its number fool you, only at 200,000. It has 4,500 backers because the price point is $29 or $44, which is great. $44 for the expansion. They just unlocked another character at 200,000. So if this rings true at all to you, I say go check it out. So that is it right now for the Kickstarter Roundup this week, just as a quick touch on a lot of subjects. I'm going to be doing a more focused review of Burncycle as well as Bardsung and, whatever else comes up in the future. I got one in the back here, right there, if you're checking things out. That is going to be hitting the table and going to be my first ever real review on here. And so if you're looking forward to that at all, if that seems like anything that you're interested in, be sure to subscribe, like, comment, let me know what else you're backing right now. Like I said, there's always one or two that fly under the radar that people are excited about, or that there's topics you want me to talk about. I'll be putting a video out later this week of the news and the notables. So just let me know what you think and what strikes your fancy right now and what you're pledging. I'll probably also do a video in the next couple weeks of what I have backed, what I haven't backed, and why. So thanks for watching. Thanks for liking. Thanks for just following it all. I appreciate it. And, with all the stuff going on up there, stay safe, stay classy. I'll see you next time.